They are lithophones, a kind of percussion instrument. And the fact that they are here, and we have an archaeologist who found them, and we have a composer who managed to write a concerto for these ancient instruments, is just spectacular. So, first of all, I want to introduce a couple of people. Mike Udow is, first of all, a dear friend of mine. He was the principal percussionist for the Santa Fe Opera. He was a professor of percussion at the University of Michigan, which is where he and I met. He is a composer, and he is a Longmont resident. I wanted to share this quick story about Mike. It happened relatively recently. We had a composer we had a percussionist in the Longmont Symphony who was having some issues, and I said, maybe you want to talk with my friend Mike Udow. And he said, oh my gosh, Mike Udow, I'd love to talk to him, but he doesn't live anywhere around here. I said, oh, actually he does. He lives right here in Longmont. And he says, oh my gosh, Michael Udow, he's one of my idols. So I think it's amazing that we have kind of one of the percussion gods among us, and who happens to live here in Longmont. Marilyn Martirano is let's see, I want to get this right, registered professional archaeologist. She is the owner and principal archaeologist at Martirano Consultants LLC, and she has she found these instruments and figured out what they were. I'm sure you will tell us more about that as we continue. 3 or 4 years ago, Mike approached me with kind of a proposal. He said, I found this fascinating thing. I don't know if it was online or you watched it on the news. And he said, I would be interested in writing a concerto for these ancient instruments. And I said, that sounds like an amazing idea. And we all got together and we played on them to see what was possible and if it was possible to do this. And we all agreed it absolutely was. So it's an amazing thing that we are here today. A lot has changed since that evening that we all shared together. We're all now wearing masks, among some other things. The performance, I just wanted to let you know, it will be on April 23rd at Vance Brand Civic Auditorium here in Longmont at 7:30 p.m. So that is when you can hear truly the culmination of all of the work, all of the history that's come together in this kind of culminating moment. So without further ado, Michael, would you want to say a couple of things?
Okay.
Here.
Thank you, Elliot. It's really a great pleasure to interface with you folks. And can you hear? Is there anyone who cannot hear me without this? Okay, so I'm putting it on. Is it? Yeah, it is on. Okay. Can you hear me now? Sounds like a commercial on TV. Well, I was going to begin by putting you to work. And for those of you who were at the presentation at the Longmont Public Library, I apologize because this is going to be a little bit of a repeat, but it's very short. So bear with me. I did want to share this with you folks. So, this is a bird, right? It happens to be a one-syllable word. And so if we keep a pulse, bird, 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 if you'll kindly join me, and bird, bird, you can all say it. Bird, 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 bird. Very good, okay? And we have a tiger, tiger, two-syllable word. Tiger, 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 tiger. Okay, and we're dividing, and so we're keeping that same beat, but we're dividing it into two pulses within that beat. And we have a dinosaur. Dinosaur, 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 dinosaur. So we're dividing the beat into 3 equal parts. Well, actually 2 16ths and an 8, but three solid pulses. And we have an armadillo. He came all the way up from Texas today to see us. It's so cold down in Texas. Okay. Tom and Gloria know about Texas. Okay, so armadillo, 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 armadillo. Great. And believe it or not, there is a hippopotamus, hippopotamus. 5 syllables, right? Hippopotamus, 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 hippopotamus. Great. So you thought you were out of the woods, but not quite, folks. So we can now clap and go from 1 and go down. Okay? So let's do each one twice. And then move down to the next. Ready, and bird, bird, tiger, tiger, dinosaur, 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 hippopotamus, hippopotamus, hippopotamus. You get the idea. But the plot thickens. I mean, Miss Marble is alive and well. Oops, I went too far. There we go. So what we're going to do is start at the top left, read across, and down. And, okay? And we'll do each one once. Am I obstructing anyone's view? Okay. So here we go. Starting here. Ready, and bird, tiger, dinosaur, armadillo, tiger, bird, dinosaur, bird, armadillo, tiger, armadillo, dinosaur, bird, tiger, hippopotamus, bird. Oh, you guys are great. Way to go. So now that you're awake, I can sit down because I'm turning this over to Marilyn now, headset included, who has a very special guest to introduce. I'll be back later.
Get this organized. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to introduce somebody special who came to join us today, and I really appreciate it. She'll say a few words later on, toward the end of my presentation here. This is Dr. Holly Norton. She is the Colorado State Archaeologist. She is also the Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer, and she is the Director of the Office of Archaeology and Historic Preservation. I think she maybe should be doing something else today with all those titles, but we're sure glad she's here and joined us. Okay. So the first thing I like to ask people is, what is a lithophone? So litho is Greek for stone, and phone means sound. So a lithophone is a musical instrument that consists of a purposely selected rock or stone. Oftentimes it's formally shaped like these, and it's either tapped or rubbed with friction to produce musical sounds. There are basically 2 types of lithophones. Portable ones, like these, that you could carry around if you wanted. They're actually pretty heavy, but you could carry them. There are also stationary lithophones that could be huge boulders or big rock outcrops that you could also strike and get musical sounds out of them. So lithophones are actually found all throughout the world. We didn't just make this up, right? We hadn't really heard about them before, at least archaeologists hadn't thought about lithophones that much. But when you start researching it, lithophones are found just about everywhere. Asia, South America, Africa, even Hawaii. And now there's some ancient ones that have been found in Colorado. Some of these lithophones date over 6,000 years or older. And what's really interesting to me is that people still play these today. And I have an example here. Maybe afterwards you can come up and try it. This is called a danda, and it's actually a mini version of a traditional lithophone that's played in Vietnam. Let me make sure this gets up a little bit so you can hear me there. And I just got this. You can actually order it from eBay. This was my Christmas present from my husband, who's actually a musician as well. And it's pretty cool. Even though this is small, it makes some pretty nice sounds. And if you go online and you Google search Vietnamese lithophones, you can actually see people playing large ones today. They use large rocks and they lay them out and they look like a xylophone. So it's pretty cool. So lithophones have been around for thousands of years and they're still used today. So how were these lithophones discovered in Colorado? Well, I actually grew up in the San Luis Valley, in the southern part of Colorado, and I've worked as an archaeologist in the Rocky Mountains and actually at Great Sand Dunes National Park and Preserve for, I hate to admit it, but over 40 years now. And do you know where Great Sand Dunes is? Does everybody have a pretty good idea? Really a special place. But I've worked there doing archaeological projects for a long time. And one of the things we do is work with local folks called collectors who pick up artifacts. And unfortunately, that may not be a good thing to do because once you pick it up, it loses that context. So we don't know exactly where it was. We can't learn everything about it. But when we went to visit some of these folks, we realized that they had these really strange looking artifacts, and they're very carefully made. They're ground and pecked, and sometimes they're polished. Like this one is highly polished. So people must have spent a lot of time making them. But what their function was not really clear to us. We find we thought maybe they were some huge tool to crush and grind, but we thought, why would you need something this big and heavy to just crush some nuts or something? This is what we usually find when we're looking for things that people use to crush seeds, nuts, corn. This is called a mono. Mono means, does anybody know? Hand. So this is the hand stone that's used to grind. This piece on the bottom is called a metate. And so you put your nuts or your seeds and you could just grind it like that. But you don't need one that weighs 10 pounds, right? So some of the ones at Great Sand Dunes, some of the artifacts we found were over 2 feet long and they weighed about 10 pounds. So what happened was we studied them for a long time. We looked at what's called U-square. In other words, we looked at the surface of these with a microscope, and the wear on them didn't make sense. So nobody was using them to crush and grind. And we just thought, well, they're a mystery. So we put them back in the drawers at Great Sand Dunes National Park and just thought someday we might figure it out. But it bothered me. We didn't know what they were. And so I was always thinking about it. And then in 2013, I think it was, a colleague of mine sent me a YouTube video, which I think is a great way to figure out mysteries these days. And this video was a French researcher at the Museum of Man in Paris, and they had drawers full of these that had been brought back by French soldiers from Africa in the early 1900s. So they didn't know what they were either. They couldn't quite figure it out because they're so long and they're beautifully made. Well, Mr. Gonthier, who was a jeweler, had a jeweler's hammer, and he just happened one day to tap on them. And that's when he realized that they were lithophones. And so when I saw that video, I thought, this is crazy idea. Archaeologists like Holly, and there's some other people out in the audience, Ted Hofer, we don't go around tapping artifacts normally. And I thought, well, somebody will think I'm crazy, but I was at home by myself, and I thought, well, I'll just go ahead and try this. And I got some little pieces of foam, like the researcher in Paris had. I set them up on this foam, and my younger daughter is a percussionist, and so she had a basket of mallets sitting by the piano. So I went over there, I grabbed some different kinds of mallets, and I tried playing them, and I just thought, you're kidding. They make sounds. They sound like tapping on a metal bell, or tapping on a xylophone, or even tapping on wood, like a wood marimba. And I got pretty excited. And so I actually ended up taking the artifacts back to the park. But then when I realized these were lithophones, I got some people excited about that. And I'll tell you what happened after that. But first I'll play a few for you, since we need a little more music after we did our little activity with Mike over there. But here's what they sound like. So I'm playing these with modern mallets, right? These are ancient instruments. These are from Amazon, and we know that ancient people didn't have Amazon, which maybe that's okay. So what did they play the instruments with? Well, they had access to a lot of different kinds of natural mallets. For example, this is just a rock, a similar type of rock to some of these. So you could play them with your rock. You can also use an antler. This is a piece of an antler. They could also use bone. And this was dinner at our house one night, but I saved it so I could use it to play these lithophones. They could have also used a hard wood, and this is boxwood, is that correct, Mike?
Oh, I'm not sure.
Okay, well, it's a hard wood. But these are all natural materials, so ancient folks didn't need Amazon. I'll just say that. There is a key to playing these, though. So if you want to play these, and ancient people figured this out. Do you see the two little marks on there? Those mark what are called acoustical nodes, or they're the dull zones on these instruments. Even though these are ancient instruments, they still have these locations on them that if you're going to play it, you need to either set the lithophone on those two acoustical nodes or dull zones, or if you're going to suspend it this way, you have to also suspend it on those two spots. So if I hold it this way, I have to hold it at that acoustical node, and I'll show you why. Can you hear it plays two notes also? But what happens if I don't hold it there? The sound is muffled. So people, ancient folks figured this out probably really quickly. So they knew how to play their lithophones. They didn't know physics, which is what explains why there are these two dull zones here. But they could figure it out just by listening, right? So that's the key to playing these. Okay. So they're very dense stone. If you come up afterwards and you get a chance, just lift it, not too high, but just lift it up. And you'll realize that it's very dense stone. And most of the stones are granites, schists, things like basalt, other volcanic materials, but they're all very dense. And If you play this, which is actually made of sandstone, I can hold it at the sort of no musical sound, right? So not all rocks make musical sounds. They have to be certain types of rock. They have to be very dense and hard. So we don't know how people made these. What did they look like before they made them into these shapes? Perhaps they were quarried, just like modern quarries for granite or marble, where they took a big piece off maybe and then took it back and perhaps spent the winter and shaped them down to look like this. We aren't sure. The other thing they could have done is find, this one is really heavy. This is really a funky looking rock. Can you see the shape of this? It's what I call a natural ringing stone. So this is naturally shaped like this. This is not shaped by a person, it's shaped by nature. But somebody in the past could have found this, kind of like I did. When my husband was fishing, I was walking around the lake, tapping on rocks. Anyway, he doesn't mind. Well, maybe he does, but it's too bad. So I was walking around, I tapped on probably hundreds of rocks, and none of them made a sound until I hit this one. So that's just a natural rock. But it could be that people in the past found something like that, tapped on it, realized it had musical properties, and then made it to look like this. We don't really know. We're still trying to figure all that out. So once I realized these could be lithophones, I got pretty excited. I talked to a number of archaeologists who originally thought I was a little cuckoo. Not Holly.
Not for a second.
But then once I started showing them the information, showing them the artifacts and the research, and showing them how these are found all over the world, I was able to write a grant to the State Historic Fund, to History Colorado Museum, and I studied 22 of these lithophones from the San Luis Valley. And I spent a couple years. I know every little peck mark on here. I took photographs. I measured them, I weighed them, and then, of course, because they were musical instruments, I wanted to know what sounds they made. So I did a musical analysis of each one, and that to me was really important because we want to know, why do they look like this shape? Why are they a certain length? So if you're going to shape one of these, if you take some off the length, Mike knows this, what happens?
The pitch goes up.
Yes. So to me, they were choosing certain sounds that they wanted by shaping these ancient artifacts and making them a certain length and a certain thickness. So if they had one that was 2 feet long, maybe they had a different sound in their head. They could take a little bit off the length or take some off the thickness and create certain sounds. So that's one of the things I was trying to figure out. I still don't know, why they wanted certain sounds, but just like in different cultures around the world, people use different notes to create music. And some of those notes, if we hear them, they may sound harsh to your ear, but in some cultures, they play with different scales, different notes. So I think these could have some big implications as far as who was making these and, where did they come from? What music did they have in their heads? Because musicians have those thoughts in their head. They have things they want to hear. So now I'll ask Holly to say a few words. Here's what happened. You can talk more about this, but when I was first trying to study these. I asked the museum, History Colorado Museum, if they had any of these. And of course, they have a database, and if you look up lithophone, nothing comes up because nobody knew they had lithophones. And so the only way to figure it out was the curator was very kind, and she went, just looked in some of their drawers, pulled out some things. And that's how we ended up with 4 of these, is just by pulling them out. So you want to say a few things? Holly?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I don't have anything profound to say. I just really love this project, and I was one of the people who was excited as soon as Marilyn brought it up. I never thought she was a little cuckoo.
Really? No.
Never.
Okay.
But what I really love about this is that we're really good as archaeologists talking about what people ate and how they hunted and what their housing may have looked like. And I get in trouble sometimes for saying this, but that can be a little boring. I feel like this project, more than any other research that we have going on in Colorado right now, really humanizes people in the past. I don't think there is much more universal than music, despite all the differences that people in different cultures around the world have in how they create music. It's something that we all share, and I really commend Marilyn just for her immense creativity in thinking about past peoples and giving us this incredible gift of thinking about them as complex, creative artists. So, and thanks for inviting me today.
Thank you, Holly. I really appreciate it. Just one more quick thing. In, I think it was 2018, Colorado Public Radio picked up a story about this, and then National Public Radio also did. And I believe that's how Mike first found out about this research, and now he can tell the rest of the story.
The rest of the story, that's an NPR thing.
Marry somebody who studied peeled trees and no.
Okay. So, we're all going to be doing some music together in a moment, but I'll zip through this. Oh, we've already gone backwards. Sorry about that. So, there's a little quote from Albert Einstein. A person who never made a mistake, never tried anything new. And the idea of composing a work with lithophones and other percussion instruments was something that I had proposed to Maestro Moore, and he accepted the idea. And here we are today. This is an example. Marilyn and Sal invited us over to their home, us being Elliot and myself, to see these lithophones. And so we experimented with them, and Sal captured a bit on his phone, which we'll share with you, perhaps. Where'd it go? Oh, I'm pressing the wrong button.
Good job.
So, aside from being a consummate maestro, Elliot is a marvelous cellist as well. And I don't think you had percussion experience prior to us jamming.
No, I was very honored to jam with him, though.
And so one of the beautiful things about early music, whether it was a grunt in the voice or pounding on stones, was that anyone could do it. Now, of course, my field advanced, and it takes a lot of skill to do it in the way that my colleague Pauline Soderholm, who was principal percussionist in the Longmont Symphony and was on the board of the Longmont Symphony, knows full well. And so we spent years and years and years and years perfecting our skills. Moving on. So, you may know that in Marble, Colorado, the Yule Marble Quarry is there, and people come from all over the world to do stone sculptures in the summer. There's a great barbecue place there too, by the way. This piece of marble is not from that mine, but it is marble, and it sounds like this. Want to hear it with a louder mallet? So, not all marble is created equal, and it was just one of those strange things that that marble that I experimented with did not work for the purpose of building a modern lithophone. I went the wrong way again. Come on, Michael, get your act together. There we are. So now, just up the road in Pinewood Springs, did you know that we have a major quarry? Well, that's it, and I was up there, took the photo with my phone, and this is a granite quarry, and that's Caleb Leifsfeld. His great-grandfather came to Colorado from Scandinavia and started this quarry. If you're headed up to Estes Park and you see that, turn off to the right, and it's marked with a county line road, I think. You take the road back up to the right and go all the way up. I don't have four-wheel drive, and I should have to get up there. It was scary coming down. So don't try it on your own. But that's Caleb and the mine, and he provided me with a car load full of red rose marble, and it sounded like this after I hauled 200 pounds of it down the mountain and cut it up. Experimentation is important in life, as any scientist will tell you. Now, I did find through a lot of research, and it takes research just on the internet, that the supplier in Denver that supplies his granite to all the granite countertop makers in Colorado recommended that I try absolute black India granite. Well, that costs $2,000 a slab, and I'm a starving musician. So, but I was able to find offcuts from countertops in Longmont. And Red, who you see in the salmon-colored shirt, agreed to go pick it up at another shop and work with me on this with his crew. So that's the forklift hauling this about 1,000-pound piece of absolute black granite into his shop. He's up on 66 just before I-25. And there, you can see that the black granite right here. And it's being lifted down onto this platform, which is made of concrete, and it's all mechanized and motorized, and the platform tilts to become this flat table. So it took the whole thing and tipped it 90 degrees. There's the table, and you might want to cover your ears because we have a little bit of sound here. And this is the diamond bit circular blade that's cutting lengths of this slab of granite that help make the bars. So fasten your seatbelts. Hello, wake up. This is silly. I'm going to switch gears for a moment, pardon me, and operate this from my laptop rather than waste time. Pardon me for one moment. We're going to get out of this. Oh, that won't do it. Let's go back to slideshow. I'll cut out the laser. Hopefully I can operate it from here. I think that gives you enough sense of, so cutting that whole slab took about a week and a half to just cut the lengths and then start to tune them. The next step, was polishing it, and this is Red's crew. So while I was building a lithophone, they were making countertops for kitchens and bathrooms and so on. These are the bars that were finished and tuned at the shop. And after they went to the car wash on Hofer and 17th for a good bath. And I have another very special guest to introduce. Lars sawed our home, the better half of Polly and Lars, or the other way around, whichever you prefer. Lars helped he built the frame for the lithophone that you're going to see in just a minute. And Lars, you want to wave hi there? Yeah. And Lars, we've known each other since our college days when Polly and I were students at the University of Illinois. And his career was that of a minister, but he's a very fine craftsman and woodworker, and just built an addition onto their house. He's amazing. So this was the design that I first provided to Lars of the idea of a frame for this instrument. And this is Lars in his garage workshop constructing the frame. And there you get a close-up view from the end that the bars lay on there with support. And then Lars brought everything over to the house after many back and forths, and we laid it out. These are some of the pieces that then were assembled and created this 3-octave chromatic lithophone. And so these are reject bars. These are not the one, but it is the absolute black granite. Very different sound. And interestingly enough, to my ear, quite attuned and to the ancient lithophones. So here is a little video. Hello, I'm Mike Udow, and this is the lithophone. This is the lithophone with the soft chord mallet. And here is the sound when I use a rosewood mallet. This is a heavier rosewood mallet to in louder sections with the orchestra. So, hello, I'm Mike Udow. Why did I do that? So this is our soloist, Anthony Costanza. He's professor, and this is part of the piece. Tony's a wonderful musician. I've toured with him for probably 40 years in Asia, a lot in Japan and the States. And Tony's a professor at the University of Wisconsin, and he did his master's and doctorate with me at Michigan, but graduated a number of years before Maestro Moore showed up to work on his advanced studies. And you might ask, well, wait a second, this piece isn't going to be performed until late April. How is it possible that Tony's playing with an orchestra? Well, the orchestra is MIDI, it's coming out of my computer. And Tony had an earpiece in so he could listen to it, and he played along using the vibraphone and this piccolo woodblock. And the vibraphone is the substitute for the lithophone, because the lithophone is here in Longmont. So he's coming in a week ahead of time, and he's going to set up all his gear in our house. Fair warning to the neighbors. and he's going to practice using the lithophone in combination with the other instruments. So,
hello, my name is Tony Costanza, and I'll be soloist on Michael Udow's Ancient Echoes with the Longmont Symphony Orchestra. I'm here today to show you some more instruments that will be used in this unique concerto. We can start with the Chinese cloud gongs, which are here. These instruments are used in traditional Chinese music, usually of mixed instrumentation. And what's kind of unique about them is the size of the instrument does not determine the pitch, but instead the thickness. So the low ones are a little bit thinner than the higher ones. Michael likes to use these cloud gongs in conversation with the granite lithophone, this brand new instrument he built, which will be stationed right below the Chinese cloud gongs. From there, we can go up to the German Almglock. These are basically tuned cowbells. They have lovely sustained sound. Michael likes to use these both as straight up instruments for melody, but also as a drum for other instruments to play melodies on top of. These are Japanese dabachi. They are bowl gongs, essentially, and they're often used in Buddhist ritual for prayer and meditation. They sound like this. Michael uses these to accompany as a subtle accompaniment to an alto flute solo in the middle of the concerto. Then we can can go over to the Indonesian angklung. These are tuned bamboo tubes. There are 3 per angklung rack, which means there are 3 different octaves of each pitch represented. Usually in Indonesia, these are played with many people, and each person plays 1 bar, sort of like hand bells, where then they simply play their notes of the melody at the appropriate time. We have them put on a rack here, and Michael likes to use these in combination with other instruments, especially warm sounding instruments, to create a really unique combination of timbre. They sound like this.
So this is the opening of the score that Maestro Moore has in front of him right here. And this is how the composition begins. It starts with the low strings at the bottom. And then here's the solo line, and you can see that here's the clarinet that enters under the strings, and then the soloist responds, so it's a call and response. And then it goes back up here to the oboe, who has a little solo, and there's a response by the soloist. And then it goes up to the flute, the highest member of the woodwind family, and so on. And that's how the piece opens with the ancient lithophones. And let's see. Yeah, and Maestro Moore is going to step in and give you a little mini conducting lesson. And then he's going to conduct me as I play with the MIDI orchestra the opening of the piece. So you get to kind of hear how the piece unfolds. Okay. Yes? But you want this too?
Okay, so one of the things that I was, thinking about speaking about here today was kind of how do you structure a rehearsal of a world premiere. One of the things is that the first thing that we would do when I'm rehearsing world premiere, especially with a soloist, is we're going to rehearse the orchestra without the soloist. And like this, it allows the orchestra to sort of play through things where maybe they make some mistakes here or there, or I can coach them a little bit, like here, I think we're gonna need to be a little softer, here, this is an important part. So that's one of the things that I'll be doing when we begin, is we will not have Tony present. The next thing is that we will have them present, we will have Tony present, and we're going to go through the entire piece and sort of see where things are, and then we're gonna, fine tune everything kind of as we go. One of the things that Michael does a lot in this work is he switches what's called the meter, the time signature. So if it's a 3/4 bar, or a 6/4, or a 4/4, he's changing meter. And so I thought what I would do is at least give you some of the kind of the basic things. One, and the most basic things, and I actually wrote this down, I want to get it right. I had a friend who said, the bar line is sacred. The bar line, thanks. The bar line is right there. There's 1, there is 2, there's the 3rd bar, and so on. It's sacred, and you always have to mark it. And so what a conductor does to mark the bar is they go down. 1 is down. The bar line is 1, and that is always going to be down. Now, sometimes, depending, it may be down and to the left, or down and to the right. But it's always first going to be down and then in some direction. So a 3/4 is going to be down. I actually often will go, especially with the slower tempo, down to the left, to the right, and then up. Down, right, up. Down. And actually, some people are left-handed, and so if you are left-handed, you can do this with me. It's going to be down, and in, then out and up. So it's down, out, up, down, out, up. So let's do a 3 pattern, ready? So it's down, out, up. Ready? Down, out, up, down, out, up, down, out, up, down, out, up. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Exactly. A 4 pattern, which you see in this bar, is going to be down, in, out, up, down, in, out, up, down, in, out, up. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Exactly. So it gets a little bit more complicated than that, particularly as we get further along. Probably the 3rd excerpt that we have, Michael starts making me have to work for it. But it's all certainly worth it. So let's see, is the next part,
Right,
are we going to improvise?
we are.
Okay.
So,
If,
Marilyn, I'm gonna need to sneak by you. I'll come around. You don't have to really, just if you back up and touch with Dr. Norton, that's great. So I'll start it and then zip on over there.
okay. And I could do maybe an ostinato type thing here. Would that be good, or do you want me to be over here?
Or are you gonna conduct the opening?
Oh, this is, yeah, we're conducting this, sure,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay. So, okay. Whoops. So this next excerpt is just of Tony is demonstrating a couple of the instruments, which he'll discuss right now. Other instruments in the concerto. So it's not only the ancient lithophone and the modern lithophone, but the Chinese cloud gongs, which he spoke of.
The Japanese uchiwa daiko are these instruments here. Uchiwa daiko translates to fan drum, more or less, and they're used in traditional Japanese music. For Michael's composition, he uses them very melodically and allows the soloist to improvise. They sound like this. Which takes us to our final drum, the largest of them, which is the Japanese odaiko. Odaiko essentially translates to large drum. It's a very powerful instrument, also used in a lot of traditional Japanese music. Michael likes to use it in conversation with the orchestra, with the biggest point of that being at the climax and end of the composition. Drum sounds like this.
So that's a quick demonstration. Tony's not playing vigorously in the concerto. He does, and it's the ending, and you will hear it. So here is an excerpt from that Maestro Moore is going to conduct. It's in 12, it starts in 12/8, and it's using the Uchiwa daiko, and I'm just going to scat sing because I don't have the drums here. Those were my drums at one time. Tony bought a lot of my instruments when I retired and moved to Colorado. And that section sounds like this with the maestro conductor. And so on. I didn't want to bring all the instruments because then you wouldn't come to the concert. So.
You want this here?
Oh, thank you.
They can hear your
Oh.
scatting even better.
Oh, for better or worse. Okay. I forgot to put this in. I apologize. So, this is another section, and Tony's demonstrating the Middle Eastern darabuka, which is a goblet-shaped drum, but I'll let him take it from here.
This is a Middle Eastern goblet drum called darabuka or doumbek. It also goes by a number of other names depending on the language you're speaking. It's one of the most popular drums used throughout the Middle East. It's used in very classical as well as popular musics. Because it's played directly with the hands, there's a lot of opportunities for different sounds. All kinds of different timbres available to us in this drum. Michael allows me to improvise on this drum during the concerto. So he gives me a sketch of the rhythmic material he wants, but because the instrument by its nature is an improvisational instrument, he is used in such in the concerto as well.
Here's a little excerpt of Tony improvising using the drum with more activity, so you can appreciate the skill it takes to play this instrument. So here's an excerpt from one of the darabuka sections from the concerto, and Elliot will conduct, and I will scat for you. Ella Fitzgerald, I am not. Dinosaurs and armadillos and hippopotamuses, you thought you were off the hook, but not quite, because this is the basically the end of the presentation. But I wanted to get you to do a little work. And before I do that, I wanted to show you that aside from just striking these instruments, that it's possible, because in the quarry, there's a lot of rough stone, right? It's not just flat, smooth. So you could take an implement, as Marilyn demonstrated, to strike another stone on stone, but you can also scrape it, which makes an interesting sound. And if you change the bar, changes the pitch. And finally, I see Sue nodding her head. She can hear the difference in the pitch. And so, but with the lithophone that I built, it's to be struck, because you can't turn all the bars on the side, because what happens, here, I'll use this. So I was after a certain kind of tone for this instrument and limited it that way. And Marilyn aptly demonstrated that earlier. So to end with, just to, so you can all be invigorated as you enter the cold and be warmed up, I thought we could do one more little thing together to end the session. And then we'll have time for questions. So, just as we read across with the birds and tigers and dinosaurs, we'll read across like a book, 549, 756, 387. And we'll count these pulses out loud together, which goes like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay? And if you remember your math skills, it's a good thing I'm not the treasurer of our HOA. The 5 plus 4 is? 9. Plus 9 is? 7 plus 5? 12. Plus 6? 18. 3 plus 8? 11. Plus 7? 18. 18 plus 18? 36. Plus 18? 54. How about this? 18 times 3. There we go. Okay, so we can do these kinds of things as educators, working in 5th grade classes with students to help them and combine music with their mathematics skills, or if it's poetry, how to set poetry to music and so on. So what we're going to do, just to end, is to clap the odd numbers only. Odd numbers are
5, 9, 7.
right. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Okay? So if we clap on those numbers, we'd be clapping 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Okay? We'll do it more slowly. And remember what Einstein said, if you don't try anything, we'll never learn. So, we'll go, da, 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 go. And
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
right, and then back around again. So,
That was fun.
now it's time for questions. And hopefully some astute answers. There's someone in the back.
What was the date again in April?
April 23rd.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the program. It's at Advanced Brand Auditorium. Tickets are on sale now online, and everyone must show, wear a mask and show proof of vaccination to enter the high school with an ID. And if you're not comfortable coming to the concert live, a week after the concert or thereabouts, there will be a broadcast of it. So your ticket not only allows you to enter for the concert live, but to experience it online, and you can do both. If you like the piece, you can watch it online a week later, and the whole concert. And Maestro Moore's program, just an absolutely terrific program. Firebird Suite, boy, that bass drum note at the end. Boom, ba, da, da, dee, da, da, dee, da. If that comes before my piece, everyone's going to leave because. And then Brahms first with the opening C's on the timpani. Boy, how dramatic can that be? So anyway, questions? We'll just pass this around.
Does it matter where you hit it on that stone, what the sound will be? Is it the same all the way through the whole length of the stone? Because I thought it was a little different, whether she hit the tip or, well, you had that special sweet spot on it.
The question is, does it matter where you hit the stone?
So just as Marilyn held the ancient lithophone, and I will do the same at the node approximately, and so I tuned this so that it would be pretty much the same at each spot. But again, if you hold it off, it's dead because it's not, I'm not holding it at the point of least vibration. So this is vibrating just like a string, Elliot's cello, where the vibration goes down through the node, comes back, comes up through the node on the other side, and out. And so that's why we hold it at the node.
What happens when it's on the base that he built?
The frame?
The
What
frame.
happens when it is on the frame that
Because you're
Lars
not
built?
holding it, you know?
Right.
Because he's not holding it at the node, what have you done, Michael?
Right. So if you just set these down, on the table. So I went to Ace Hardware and found this high density rubber tubing that the bars sit on at the nodes, and that allows for greater vibration, just like Marilyn's terrific idea of having the rope at the nodes. And then that sounded pretty darn good, but I wasn't satisfied, so I went and got weed whacker plastic cord and laced it between each bar so that the bars even sat on top of this, on top of the weed whacker cord, and then it sounds even that much more resonant. So if you're a gardener or have a lawn service, you can build a lithophone.
You know, I gotta say one thing real quick that I find to be really fascinating. Artists like Picasso, where did they go to get a lot of their materials? The junkyard. Percussionists are not dissimilar. One of the things that is used in many orchestral pieces is something called a brake drum. It is literally a brake drum from a car. They will go to used auto things, they take parts from junkyard, and they fashion them into instruments. So I think it's a fascinating thing. We have a question, yes?
Yes, is it just experimentation to figure out where the node is?
Is it just experimentation to know where the node is the question?
Oh, yeah. So it's approximately a fifth of the way in from the end
Okay,
of whatever the length of the material happens to be.
okay.
I saw you had another question, yes? Can we possibly have an encore on the ancient instrument? I think he's standing up, I think that's a yes.
And how about if we all play together?
Sure, all right, we're all gonna play something together.
I have You want soft or hard mallets?
It doesn't matter.
How many want to hear it with soft mallets?
We're going with hard mallets. clearly.
Hard mallet.
Okay.
Nobody raised their hand.
So who's setting the tempo?
Because I'm the conductor, I will.
Okay. Yes, we do.
Can't give it control, can they? No. They have too much fun.
Are there, wow, there are questions, I love it. Yes?
What's the definition of a percussion instrument? I know, I always thought it was just a drum, but a musical one.
This is a fascinating question. What is the definition of a percussion instrument?
Well, normally you'd think of it, Sue, as an instrument that's struck. However, there's many instruments that are rubbed. You can rub the skin of the instrument. You can scrape it like a Cuban cuiro that's used in salsa music and so on. You can rub it like sandpaper blocks. You can rub the sandpaper blocks together. Strike, rub, scrape, shake, maracas. So it's all types of things. And in this day and age, it could be, if you wanted, say in Symphony Fantastique of Berlioz, where there's a very low C and G, it's supposed to be, well, they use chimes, but it's supposed to be church bells. Well, the Dallas Symphony and the Philadelphia Orchestra, New York Philharmonic, LA Phil have church bells that are cast in Karlsruhe, Germany, or from a foundry in the States, but they're an octave too high from what Berlioz wrote. So a lot of times now orchestras are using MIDI, where it's recorded in a church somewhere in Europe, like Russia, Moscow, and then it's put on a electronic keyboard, and the percussionist goes doink, doink, doink.
How are we doing on time? Do we have time for one last question? Great. Nancy, I think you had a question?
Are the bars fragile?
Are the bars fragile?
That's my wife asking that question. Yes, as strong as this material is, if I drop it, it will break, and it will have no sound. Therefore, I'll give you the nitty-gritty. I just purchased 2 cases for $650, and then $200 of styrofoam to put in the case to cut out so that each bar has a slot. So it'll be brought to the concert hall in these cases, plus a third case, just a suitcase. Well, it's the next size up from that one. And that's just to protect the bars. So, and the instrument after the concerto next fall in November is going to the Percussive Art Society in Indianapolis into their museum. But Tony will have access to it so that if other performances come up, he can go get it and play the concerto.
That's amazing. Any other questions? Yes, please. And then to you. Yes.
So in the study of the Colorado lithophones, was there any kind of musical scale? Were you able to discern any kind of musical scale?
In the study of all of the lithophones from Colorado, was there any kind of scale that was discovered is the question.
That's a great question. What we did is we figured out what notes they play, and of course each one can play 2 different notes. but the ones I studied were all found separately. And so, there was no real scale like if they had been found like this. One of the interesting things though is that more than half of the notes that were played by these lithophones, these ancient ones, were from pentatonic scales. And if you're a musician type, or you know a piano, the black notes on a piano are the pentatonic scales. So that's just interesting to me because pentatonic scales are sort of the basis of music all over the world, right? And the basis of even things like jazz, I believe, and country music. So they were creating music that's similar to other music around the world. And they have found groups of these lithophones, they're called kiva bells, in the southwestern US. They found groups of up to 20 some together. And I don't know, nobody's figured out the scale, so I think that's a job I'd like to do. Sometime.
And yes, I believe you had a question? Any more
Does the cold or the hot affect the sound if they?
Does the temperature affect the instruments?
Yes, absolutely. When it's colder, the pitch will rise just a little bit. You may not notice it, but if you looked on a scope, you would see the needles going just a little bit higher. And when it's really warm and the molecules relax, if you think of a bridge construction, same concept, that it expands and it gets lower. And that's the same for many instruments. Playing in the opera in Santa Fe, we start out in the summer and it could be, 80 degrees in the pit one evening, well, maybe 75 in the pit one evening, because we start late, 9 o'clock, so the stage lights are down. And then by, say, the third act, it could be down into the 50s. Well, the string pitch keeps going up, but some instruments you can't retune, like the harp, real quickly. And so everyone kind of has to adjust and keep actively tuning their instrument so that the orchestra plays a tune.
Yes, we have another question in the back.
How do you store the stones?
How do you store the stones? Maybe there are two answers for this. Would you like to talk about how you store these 5,000-year-old stones?
This is how the stones are stored.
I'd like to buy it now.
History Colorado Museum made this special box. It's 2 layers. It's foam, and they actually cut out pieces so that these lithophones fit in there securely. And that way we don't worry about dropping them, especially these, because we can't replicate them. And so if we don't have that box, we use a lot of bubble wrap and things like that.
Thanks. Maestro in the middle. It's exactly the same. I just purchased these polyethylene hard-cased shells that are normally used for display units for people going to conventions, and they put up the displays. I had to find something that was large enough to accommodate the 30. The largest one is 32 inches long, so that's almost 3 feet in length. And then it's styrofoam from Home Depot or Lowe's that's cut out, and the bars slot into it. So it's exactly the same concept.
Yes, there's a follow-up question, please.
What kind of value do you place on these?
What kind of value do you place on these?
Well, I'd say it's irreplaceable. But if you'd like to buy it, we can have a discussion before we get to the museum. No, I would say probably $8,000 to $10,000 at least. Yeah, at least. Given labor, time, energy, all that went into it, materials for the instrument, for the cases, for the frame that Lars built, and so on and so forth. I think we should probably wrap things up, right? And I was just going to say that the symphony, as you can imagine during COVID, the arts are the first to get the hit. You know, it was like, when I lived in Michigan, there was an expression that if the United States caught a cold, Michigan caught pneumonia. And it's this because of the auto industry. And it's the same kind of thing in during this pandemic time. Music, dance, theater, all the arts really suffer, plastic arts and so on. And if you could kindly tell your friends about this concert and the upcoming concert this next month for the Longmont Symphony, the conductor and these musicians worked really hard to prepare a very high quality performance, and the orchestra under Maestro Moore's direction in the past 4 years has advanced by leaps and bounds, and it's really pleasurable to hear the orchestra. So please tell your friends to come out and support this really wonderful resource in our community. And you've probably seen in the papers all the work that Dr. Moore has done in terms of promoting music in the schools, as Pauline has done with the soft nutcracker for autistic children and so on that the symphony does, and also in school concerts, etc. So it's an important resource, and I, as a member of the community, but not in the orchestra, just really want to give a shout out to what this community gem is doing for us.
Thank you so much for those kind words. I'll have to pay you after. Folks, what an amazing afternoon we've had. There are a lot of videos here I haven't seen, and I was thrilled to actually see them, and I've been following along the work that Michael has been doing, making all of this possible, making this score that I have in front of me, composing it, getting our soloists together. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I hope to see you all at the performance. Any last words?
If anyone would like to come up and take a look at these ancient lithophones, you're sure welcome to, and you can even play them gently if you wish. So feel free to come up.
All right.
Thank you all so much. You have a wonderful afternoon. Oh,